The views and content expressed on the following program are provided solely for informational and entertainment purposes. They do not constitute legal advice. A podcast is not a substitute for retaining a competent, licensed attorney to advise you on your specific legal situation.
Break the business, play is work and work is play. Power into creators, have fun along the way. Break the business, doing what it takes. Celebrate success and learn from the mistakes.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show. It is time for Break the Business, where we empower indie creators and have some fun along the way. I'm Ryan Kairalla, and it is a pleasure to have you here this week. Real talk, viewers and listeners. Let me just lay it out here for you, okay? I need to tell you that I have every reason in the world for my attention to be divided this week as I do this show, okay? You could not blame me if perhaps my eye were to wander and I thought about something other than delivering info and entertainment to empower indie creators, because as we record this on Thursday, June 13th, year of our Lord 2024, my Florida Panthers, as you all know, we record this from Miami, Florida, so we love all the South Florida sports teams. My Florida Panthers are currently interlocked, are fighting in the Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final against the Edmonton Oilers. And right before we went live on the air, the Panthers scored a goal. So it is 1-0 Panthers against the Oilers. I hope by the end of this show we're still holding on to that lead, because if we fall behind over the next hour, it's going to be my fault for blowing the cartoon party horn because we're up 1-0 right now. But make no mistake, I do not have my attention diverted. I am firmly ready to do the show this week because we got ourselves a fine program, and let's get right on with it. Our co-host this week, happy to, as always, to be joined by musician, investor, and frontman for Gideon King and City Blog. Gideon King is joining us this week. Hi, Gideon.
Howdy.
Can't get the I don't know what happened there, just falling apart. I am a little excited about this Panthers team. The Florida Panthers have never won the Stanley Cup before. They broke my heart when I was 11 years old, when they got swept the first time in the Stanley Cup Final against the Colorado Avalanche. Let me tell you how bitter of a sports fan I am, Gideon. That series, okay, when I was 11 years old and the Panthers lost in 4 games to the Stanley Cup Final, we got crushed mainly because of the Colorado Avalanche goalie Patrick Waugh, who was an absolute wall in that series. We couldn't get any goals past him, and it still affects me to this day, so much so that we actually got pitched to have his son on this program as a guest, because his son's a recording artist, and I nixed it just because I didn't want any member of the Waugh family anywhere near my program because of what his dad did to me when I was 11 years old.
Ryan,
yes.
Let me be honest with you. I think it's touching that you're this excited about your Florida teams, but I just, like, for the record, I couldn't care less about the Florida Panthers. I'm from New York. I love the Yankees and I love the Knicks. And, like, I don't even, like, know what kind of, like, uniforms or who the players are on the Florida Panthers. So, like, to be totally honest with you, like, you know, I wish you well and I wish your teams well, but what I really care about is the New York Yankees and the New York Knicks. Now, I don't know if that just, like, you know, makes you want to kick me off the show, but I'm just being honest. I want this show to be about honesty and open dialogue. So I'm just sharing that with you.
I have nothing but a fond place in my heart for New York sports fans, okay? Mainly because my Florida Panthers climbed over the corpse that was the New York Rangers.
I knew this was coming.
En route to the Stanley Cup Final. That's fine. So we appreciate you all making that so easy for us so that we could be currently in this final match against Edmonton, where we're currently up 2-0 and on a bullet train to that blessed cup.
All right, well, enjoy. Just enjoy is all I have to say. Just
I am. But
I can see that. But I can see that.
But I'm telling you, I have every reason to just keep my eye on the television over there that's playing the game. But I'm firmly focused on the show this week because we got ourselves a bit of a program, Gideon
We
King.
do.
We got the
We do.
Gideon King Wheel of Topics, which is always something the crowd enjoys. We got a fantastic guest coming up in the second segment. We're going to be joined by a dear friend of mine, amazing documentary filmmaker Bill Tech's going to be joining us. He's got a new documentary coming out on HBO later this month about Stevie Van Zandt called Stevie Van Zandt Disciple. Just been kind of going down a Stevie Van Zandt rabbit hole lately, learning about this really important music figure, helped make Bruce Springsteen the legend he is today. A lot of soprano fans have, loved themselves some Stevie Van Zandt. And I've been enjoying learning about him. I can't wait to see this documentary to see what my friend Bill Tech has uncovered about this impressive figure. That's going to be a blast. Looking forward to talking to him in the second segment. And just learning more about this really cool figure in music history.
I mean, I love Springsteen, and of course, I love The Sopranos. And I also know that Stevie Van Zandt was, I think, kicked out of school for refusing to cut his hair in in the mid 1960s. So that also gives me sort of a weirdly warm place in my heart for Stevie Van Zandt. So I'm psyched to talk to the documentarian and hear what it's all about, man.
I'm thrilled for this. It's gonna be a blast. A lot of great voices that we're going to be hearing from this evening, and I'm glad to be bringing it to all of y'all. Another voice that I heard over the past week, Gideon, that was a pretty fun blast from the past for me is I was listening to a podcast from the Columbia University Low of the Land podcast. Is one of the Columbia U's podcasts, and I got to hear an old Break the Business guest, a dear friend of mine, Cassandra Spangler, terrific New York-based entertainment lawyer. I heard on the show talking about a topic that I know is important to you, Giddy. It's something you talk to me about a lot. It's something we talk about a lot in this program, which is the impact of AI in the music industry. And she was talking about the legal aspects of this. And I thought that some of the stuff that she was bringing up during this interview on the Columbia University podcast was really, really cool. And so rather than just sort of have me summarize the things that she said, which seems like a terrible waste of airwaves, I thought we could hear from the woman herself. So joining us now on Break the Business for a quick little drop in here, entertainment lawyer Cassandra Spangler. You can find out more about her work at cspanglerlaw.com. Cassandra, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan. It's been a while, so I'm happy to be back, and good to meet you, Gideon.
It's been entirely too long. You can say it. I'm an absolute bleephole for letting so many years go by between Cassandra Spangler meetings on this podcast, because I used to love having you on the show. It was a blast. And the fact that it took us this long to get you on the live TV version of the show is an injustice, but it's one we have corrected tonight.
Yes. Yeah, happy to be here.
So, this whole area of law is really intriguing to me. And since it's new to all of us, AI sort of hit the music industry like a slap in the face, and we're all still kind of dizzy from it. And so I thought your interview on that podcast really did a nice job of kind of summarizing the state of the law right now as in flux as it is. Let me just ask you this to kind of start things off. I mean, if I were to use AI to make a song that sounds like it's Ariana Grande, and I want people to think it's an Ariana Grande song, but it doesn't use any of her melody. It doesn't use any lyrics of hers. It's just meant to make people think that she recorded this song. And I put it out there. One would think intuitively that's got to violate some kind of law. But, I mean, there's not really a clear law. It doesn't violate copyright law. If you don't use her name, it probably doesn't violate trademark law. I mean, what's going on there? How can we sort of be in this, in this world where I can, basically steal Ariana Grande's voice, and it's not clear I've actually violated any law in the process?
Yeah, it's kind of all up in the air, as you mentioned, because if you're not using any portion of her existing music, there's no copyright violation there, and you're not actually using her voice. So, maybe she could bring a right of publicity claim. But that's much more difficult to do than copyright because it's state by state when it comes to rights of publicity. And it varies a lot from state to state in terms of how much protection they give. And I also think it's a little bit of a tough argument to make because you're not actually using her voice. And And, where do you draw the line if they're in the world who was born with a voice that sounds just like Ariana Grande? Now, is there a claim against her, or is it just AI? So it's very much a gray area right now. So what you're sort of seeing is, rather than dealing with it through the courts and lawsuits, record labels are negotiating with a lot of the DSPs to get this stuff taken down. And they're coming up with arrangements where they're saying, unless you want us to pull our whole catalog of millions and millions of songs, you better fix this. And so Spotify and Apple and all of those other platforms are sort of coming up with ways to police it on their end. But yeah, it's very much a gray area, and I think you'll start to see a lot of changes, whether it's more self-regulation of various platforms and various websites, or whether it's laws that are enacted. But it's kind of just taking over everywhere.
What sort of legal solution do you think should we be pursuing right now? I mean, I know that Tennessee's got a law that they're looking to set up that would directly address this. Is this something that should be done state by state? Do we need a federal right of publicity law that attacks AI? How would you like to see the legal landscape take shape on this?
Yeah, I think a federal law would be good, especially because, nowadays when you're dealing with everything is streaming. And so it's a lot harder to figure out which state do you bring the claim in, where's the violation taking place. And if it varies from state to state, I think it would be difficult to sort of police that, where, okay, this can be shown on Spotify in Ohio, but not in Tennessee, and that sort of thing. So I think some type of federal law would be good, but I think it's tough to figure out what that law should be. And also it gets tricky when you think about AI. AI cannot be the author of a copyright. So if something is created by AI, there's no copyright protection in it. So to me, the flip side of that is, well, then if AI is infringing on someone else's copyright, who do you bring that claim against? If AI can't be the author, then it also shouldn't be able to be the infringer. So there's all these kinds of different issues that I think, good luck to whoever, whether it's Congress or the courts, whoever's job it is to figure that out. It's a difficult road, I think.
Do you think, Cassandra, I had an interesting experience today. I was writing a song today, and I had 80% of the lyrics done. And I was sitting out on my porch, struggling, having writer's block. So I type in a subject, a prompt on Chat GPT. And I said, write me lyrics about a song about XYZ. And out came these, of course, really cheesy, cliched lyrics, because that's what happens when you ask AI for lyrics. But within those cheesy, cliched lyrics, there was some sparks of some ideas. And I took one and I sort of scrambled its eggs and then put it into my song, potentially anyway. But here's the question I have for you. Suppose I actually took one of the lines, literally, quite literally, took one of the lines and it inserted it in my song. I guess my question for you is the horse out of the barn, meaning that can never be attributed to the underlying artist or lyrics that AI went and got that from, its training, its learning. So is there ever going to be an attempt to create an attribution process to this incredibly anomalous beast, where I can just say, hey, give me some lyrics, big fella, and out come some lyrics, and I stick it in my song and it solves my problem, and I didn't really write it, and I don't know who really wrote it. I only know one thing: at some microcosmic level, it was an act of larceny. And I'm being a bit glib and inflammatory, obviously, but I'm wondering, like, is that horse out of the barn? Are people not even going to try to create an accounting for that or an attribution? Anyway, you get the drift of my question.
Yeah, and that is one of the arguments against AI. So the argument is that AI is basically infringing on copyright almost just by existing, because it studies,
exactly.
It studies whatever else is out there, and then it spits something out to you based upon that. the argument on the other side is that, well, that's the same thing humans do. We're inspired
They
by
do.
existing music. But it is a little bit different where you have something that can just digest every piece of music that exists, in a matter of seconds or minutes or however long it takes to do it, and then spit something out. So yeah, that is one of the many issues that are involved, or the fact that it kind of trains itself based upon existing music and whether or not that is copyright infringement.
Sure.
So I think
Will
that's
the existing, so suppose I got all my lyrics and wrote my song to it. Will that cloud the issue of, like, I do copyright all my songs, okay? I'm not sure why, because I'm not that famous and no one actually gives a shit about my music, but I do copyright them all. And so the question is, does that cloud potentially the ability to create intellectual property for what you produce, if what you produce is largely a function or a derivative entity that you got from ChatGPT or whatever? Does that cloud that copyright process?
It could. Yeah. First of all, it's great that you register all your copyrights. I recommend everyone do it. So it's great that you do that. But yes, if you're using ChatGPT or other forms of AI to help you write it, whether it's the lyrics or the music, anything that's created by AI is not protected by copyright. So down the road, if there's some sort of issue, if someone steals some lyrics from your song and you file a copyright infringement lawsuit and they somehow dig up, information and find out that you got those from ChatGPT, that could be, a way out of the lawsuit for them. So it can reduce what you're able to protect with the copyright if you're using AI.
Interesting.
Since we're on the topic of AI that can create music, this isn't strictly a legal question, Cassandra, but I know you work with a lot of artists, and you yourself, a terrific musician, a great drummer. Wanted to get the perspective of the musicians that you talk to about platforms like Suno, which can basically create music out of whole cloth, and whereas the original early versions of Suno produced a lot of dreck. The most recent version of it, version 3.5, the music's actually pretty good. It's getting better at it. And who knows how this platform is going to look even a year or 5 years from now. Are your clients concerned about these AI music generation platforms, or do they see it as a tool?
I think there's a lot of concern, and there's a lot of talk that, AI is going to basically replace human artists at some point. There's a fear of that. I think there's something that you can't really replace, a human element to music that's created by humans that you can't really replicate. There's just something there. But it is a fear, especially when you factor in a lot of these huge, giant conglomerate, music companies that are always looking to cut costs. If they can just completely cut the artist out and use AI, they're cutting out. They're keeping a lot more of the profits. So it is a fear, and it's also a fear, as you mentioned, Ryan, how quickly these things get better. Because I'm not a tech person, but my understanding is that that's the danger of AI is that, it takes human beings hundreds of years to make progress, and it's things that AI does exponentially. So there may come a point where suddenly it's, becomes so good that we can't control it anymore, like a Matrix type of a scenario. But yeah, it's definitely a fear that it will replace human created music.
Our guest is Cassandra Spangler, Esquire of cspanglermusiclaw.com. I encourage people to check out Columbia University's Low of the Land podcast to find her interview. It was really a terrific discussion, pretty thought-provoking. Cassandra, we really appreciate you joining the show. I promise you we're not going to let as much time pass between our conversations because I always enjoy talking to you.
Great. Good to see you guys, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thanks very much. The evolution of these platforms like Suno, Gideon, are pretty scary to me. I remember, I think within this year, you might have actually been co-hosting when we did a whole show making fun of the Anna Indiana video and like how bad that AI generated song was. And I even said, we can find the clip of me going, well, I guess AI is not coming for musicians anytime soon. And here we are within the same year, I believe, seeing platforms like Suno generating some pretty great music. And I'm kind of eating my words now. And that's only in the last 6 months. Imagine what it's going to look like 5 years from now.
Listen, I mean, we have created a new species, and that species is faster cognitively than we are. It has intellectual synapses that are superior to ours. I have been in the room with venture capital companies who have put money in for the last 8 years, a lot of money into programs that can make original music with real samples of real basses and real singers and real pianos. And it's otherworldly. I'm telling you, it's one, forget music. It's the most, short of reading about threats of war and whether it's China or Vladimir Putin or who knows in our own country, whatever, I've never felt so completely overwhelmed and threatened by an entity or a concept or a mechanism in my entire life. Mind blowing. And I don't know if human beings can handle this. I don't know if they can handle this.
I mean, I'm not worried because I've only seen 100 movies that are about, hey, let's create some kind of technology that's smarter than us. Don't worry, it's not going to take over and destroy us. Like, in all of those movies, everything works out fine and the humans are okay. So I'm sure this will be fine too.
Right. Yeah, no, it is. And the Panthers are going to be okay as well. I agree.
Except not, because according to producer Lauren, the Panthers just gave up a goal and now it's 1-1. And now I get to be sad. Except I'm not sad because we have like my favorite segment coming up, which is the Gideon King Wheel of Topics. Viewers and listeners, as you know from just listening to Gideon's perspective just now, my man's got a lot of great insight. He's just as comfortable talking about business as he is about music and technology. And I know I can get him to say some really cool stuff about a wide range of subject areas. And one of the things that Gideon likes to do to me is when he's coming on for a show, instead of just him telling me, hey, let's talk about this topic or that topic, he gives me like 10 different topics. And we don't have enough time to cover them all. So what I like to do is we take all the topics that Gideon has sent me and we put them in a wheel, and then we spin the Gideon King Wheel of Topics to see what we're going to talk about. So here we go. Let's spin the Wheel of Topics and figure out what our first discussion item is going to be. I love that ticking sound, by the way.
Is this truly random?
It is. The topic is stage fright. I love that. Da, da, da. The problem and solutions. Now, I will say, Gideon, I've never, I mean, it's just like maybe it's something about how I'm wired. I've never really felt stage fright before. I can understand like intuitively why standing in front of a crowd of people would be scary as hell. But it's not something that's bothered me, but it has bothered some of like the biggest names in the entertainment industry. Adele was almost driven out of the industry because of how crippling stage fright was for her.
So, it's funny. I've had these weird random bouts of terrible stage fright. Never doing television or speaking publicly, but in music. And it comes over me, sometimes I'm fine and it's totally cool from the beginning of the performance to the end. And then sometimes like right in the middle of the day of the performance, I'm like sitting there just like eating a slice of pizza and boom, it hits me. And I'm like, wow, I'm going to do terribly tonight. And it's gotten better over time. But what I would say is this about stage fright. It's a very real clinical phenomenon that triggers this fight or flight syndrome, almost like you're being mugged on the street or something scaring you. And so many different musicians that I've worked with, some of which are really well known, suffer from it, shake, their hands get cold. They have, quote unquote, the somatic symptoms of the fight or flight, syndrome. And so, I mean, only thing I would say to other artists or other performers is I think there's a few things not to do, and that's not to just drink more, or smoke more pot, or be more aggressive or obnoxious. I think you have to say, like, I literally have a clinical phenomenon, and there's certain almost clinical things, almost like therapeutic things you can do, patterns of breathing. Many performers take beta blockers, which is a pretty innocuous way that people control blood pressure, but it also it's not a high, but it gets rid of the somatic symptoms of stage fright. And so that's unbelievable. Like, the biggest singers in the world that you've ever heard of, the top divas, half of them take beta blockers.
Whoa.
And
okay.
it's a big deal. So, I mean, there's lots of things that you can do. I don't do anything anymore. I just sort of take a couple deep breaths and say, like, hey man, like, I might screw up a few notes. Nobody's going to know, and it'll be cool. And most of the time I don't get stage fright, but when it comes over me, I have to invoke these like patterns and like almost therapeutic tools to overcome it. So for anybody who's crazy enough to listen to anything I'm saying out there on the show, what I would say is find those tools. Do not just drink more. It will not make it better in the long run. It will make it better for a few minutes, that's for sure, but it will not make it better in the long run. And so find those tools. And I guess if you have to take medicine like beta blockers, half the world's on beta blockers to like control their high blood pressure or whatever. Anyway, it's still better than having 6 scotches and smoking 6 joints before you play. So stage fright, man, it's an absolute pox on performers. Many don't like to admit it, but it's there, and it's a widespread disease for those doing performative things.
It is something that isn't talked about, and I wish it was, because I feel like something that might be a big step forward in helping early career and mid-career artists handle their stage fright is just knowing that it's something that's not just unique to them, that some of the biggest names in entertainment, like Adele, like who some
Barbra
might consider
Streisand,
the best singer in the world, Barbra Streisand, suffer from this to the point that it's debilitating. I think knowing that would give those people some measure of comfort. Sure. I want to get in on this. Producer Lauren, if you are around, you've spent your life on the stage. You've probably heard some home remedies on how to handle stage fright. Do you have any thoughts here?
Let me think about that one. I also never. I'm
so glad I went to you.
I refocus the energy, I think, is what it is that I've always. It's a lot of energy and overwhelm, right? And so when you're dealing with this adrenaline rush, this energy, and you don't know what to do with it, a lot of times that'll focus inward and you'll freak out. When you're feeling the energy of a big audience, if you've never been on a stage in front of a live audience, you don't understand how palpable, how tangible that energy is that comes off. You can physically feel it. And if you're not used to it, that feeling hits you the same, right? And so if you're not expecting it, you're like, what was that? I just got hit with a wave of energy coming from other people. But if you can turn that around, if you can say, I've got a bunch of energy that's nerves, I've got a bunch of energy that is fear, that is excitement, that is whatever it's coming from or a combination thereof. If you can then take that and put it into your performance, you'll be an energized performance, or wow, there was so much passion brought to that. And I've always I think of it as like getting a fix or like juicing up on something is when I get it and I'm like, that's that feeling. And I'm like, that's right. Charge up the battery. And when you need energy, you'll get it from there.
Use it.
So I don't know if that's a normal response or not, because by the time I was on a stage and getting it, I was like taking it in versus letting it knock me over. I was like building up reserves. Does that make sense?
Before we go to break, I want to get one more spin of the wheel before we go to break and bring in Bill Tech. Here we go.
Look at this thing.
Don't be stage fright again. No. Oh, no. We can't talk about it.
Wait, now I believe this is random.
Thank you. Spin it again.
Now I believe
I don't want to talk about stage fright anymore. If it's stage fright a third time, I'm quitting radio. Oh, this is a good topic. I wanted to talk to you about this one. The topic is Spotify is about to charge more. What are the implications of this? So, Gideon, we actually talked about this for a split second last week on the show, where I made sort of the semi-controversial point of good. I'm glad Spotify is raising prices. If you are the sort of person that complains about artists not getting paid enough on Spotify, one way to fix that is to put more revenue into the pool so that there's more money to divide amongst all of the artists. I see your head shaking. Why?
There was a, I'm trying to remember the name of the economist. And he had it was a super famous quip. And he basically said, what can't go on won't. And in this case, what can't go on is that Spotify is this gigantic market cap in the stock market, meaning if you're not a trader, if some of your listeners are not a trader, meaning it's worth a lot in the stock market, billions and billions and billions. And so they can't continue to have this gigantic market cap, promise the world and say we're the pipes for everything and make no money forever. What can't go on won't. So they're raising prices, and those dollars are largely going to go to making it will be accretive, to use a Wall Street expression, to earnings per share, more dollars of earnings per share. If you, Ryan, being the eternal optimist that you apparently are, believe that a lot of that money is going to the artists, I believe you are wrong.
Well,
It's going to earnings per share. Will the artists stand up, pound the table, and demand a piece of that cheesecake, that new, bigger cheesecake? Yeah, they will, and they're going to get very little. Spotify needs to make earnings per share in order to sustain its market cap. It needs to generate free cash flow, and it is not doing those things. And so they're raising prices. And by the way, this is just the ultimate testimony to the fact that when you cut a bad deal, you wear it for the rest of your life. Meaning Spotify cut these deals for content. I know, I own a streaming service. So I know this business, man. When you cut a bad deal for content, you ain't never getting the labels to lower that. And so Spotify ain't never getting a good deal from the labels and the content owners. So they got to raise prices on us, which is another way of saying, and I don't want to use another bad word because you might get mad at me, but the S word, crap flows downhill. And right now, when they raise their prices, you're just seeing that old adage, crap flows downhill. And we're at the bottom of that hill, the consumer.
Well, normally I'd be outraged that you're disagreeing with me, Gideon King, but I can see producer Lauren gesticulating wildly in the window, which I assume can only mean that the Panthers just scored a goal. So I'm in a good mode. There we go. Thank you. Even though you said something that to me is not only upsetting, but I find to be asinine, okay? Because right now what's happening is, first of all, if Spotify tries to take this extra revenue and put it in their pocket, I am fine with whatever measures have to be taken to prevent that from happening, up to and including a legislative solution to make sure that a certain amount of that pie goes in the pockets of artists. But right now what we have, Gideon, is a scenario where the creative community is effectively subsidizing everybody's music purchases and Spotify account to the tune of what I think is a significant number. This is way too inexpensive of a product. It just is. If I told you in 1990, I have this magic rectangle that can play every song ever made, going back all throughout history. You can bring up any song on demand. You can keep all of the music in your pocket. You don't have to pay for things or keep anything. It's just every song ever made at your beck and call whenever you want it. If I told Gideon King that I had that technology in 1990, and then I asked how much would you be willing to pay for it, you'd say, $1 million or $1 billion. Clearly, that's magic. Of course. And then if I told you that's $9.99 a month, you would say that's so stupid, that's artificially low, because it is. Like, I'm not saying Spotify has to be $1 million a month, but it needs to be a heck of a lot more than $9.99 a month if we want to create a situation where artists are going to be fairly compensated for their recordings.
So I'll keep it super brief because you have an important guest that is going to come on. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, no, and yes. And what I mean by that is artists are subsidizing that economic ecosystem. But what you continue to forget and neglect on this lovely show, to which I'm invited every 4 weeks, is that never before have artists had such an incredibly powerful set of pipes through which to release and commercialize their music so that they can get paid in so many ways, including Instagram followers that come from Spotify, including Spotify followers that come from Instagram. So I don't like ever to be absolute in my analysis of anything, and I don't think there are absolute conclusions or reductions to be drawn here. Spotify should charge more. Musicians should probably get a bigger piece of the pie. I would like a bigger piece of the pie. When I stream 500,000 streams on something and I end up getting like $50 or whatever, it's somewhat disquieting, okay? It sucks, to use another word. That being said, in some ways, I should appreciate the fact that I can just release a song and put it out on Spotify. And in the 1970s, you couldn't do that. And in the 1980s, no such incredibly seamless form of distribution existed. So all I'm trying to do is bring a little balance into the discussion. And you don't have to pay me for that. And you don't have to write me a thank you note. You just have to appreciate the balance. That's all I ask before your more important guest than I am comes on.
Viewers and listeners, the only thing more entertaining
Here it comes.
than watching Ryan Kairalla argue with Gideon King on Break the Business is watching the far more contentious debate of Gideon King, the musician, fighting with Gideon King, the businessman and investor, because that is an epic struggle of just these two people who could not be at greater odds with each other, and it makes for compelling radio.
It's so true.
Let us take a quick break. We're going to be back with filmmaker Bill Tech here on Break the Business. Don't go anywhere. Break the Business is presented in cooperation with Ryan A. Kairalla, PA. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA is a law firm providing transactional entertainment legal services, including contracts, business formation, commercial law, copyright, trademark, and more. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA, Miami, Florida. rkpalaw.com.
Streaming services for Break the Business provided by LEK Entertainment. LEK Entertainment is a full-service entertainment company offering everything from consultations to full-scale events and productions, including audio and video productions, voiceovers, staged theatrical productions, script and music development, and streaming services. For more information, visit lekentertainment.com. LEK Entertainment wants to help you bring your story to life.
Thanks for supporting Break the Business. If you have a question or topic that you want us to discuss, email us at breakthebusiness@gmail.com. You can follow the host, that's me, on Twitter at Ryan Kair, and you can follow the show at the BTB Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, and on all major podcast platforms. And now, let's get back to the show. Thanks, me. Welcome back to Break the Business, everybody. Ryan Kairalla here with musician, investor, and all-around cool guy with sunglasses, Gideon King. We're just having a whale of a time and are so glad that you're joining us on Volume.com, Facebook, YouTube, SiriusXM 145, wherever you are taking in this humble program. We are so excited to have you with us on the journey. Lauren, why are you gesticulating like that? What the hell happened on the Panthers game?
Go!
Us or them?
3-1, baby.
Yes! Okay. All right. Now I'm feeling so much better that the insurance goal is in the net. I feel like I can take a breath and really enjoy our guest that's coming up. Let's go ahead and bring him out. Our guest this week is an award-winning documentary filmmaker whose new film, Stevie Van Zandt, Disciple, will premiere on HBO on June 22nd. You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting BillTech.com. We're happy to welcome my friend Bill Tech on To Break the Business. Hi, Bill.
Oh, hello, Gideon. Hello, Ryan. Hello, everyone. Hello, Lauren. Thank you for having me on. I'm thrilled.
Thrilled to have you, my friend. I've been itching to get you on our program for a long time, for a number of reasons. One, you make really cool movies, and you're sort of font of knowledge when it comes to entertainment and film and things like that. I feel like there's a lot of different conversational threads we can pull on, but the timing is perfect because you have this new documentary coming out, Stevie Van Zandt Disciple. It's going to premiere on HBO on June 22nd. First off, congratulations, my friend. That's a pretty cool get for you.
Thank you very much.
And could not be more well deserved. Let's start with the man, the myth, the legend, Stevie Van Zandt. What interested you in wanting to cover him as a subject?
I'm born and raised in Miami. And by the way, I want to say again how happy I am to be on. Every time I listen to Break the Business, I learn something. I learn several things. I'm always stimulated. And it's just fabulous. So thank you very much again, guys. So anyway, there was a writer down here in Miami. His name was John Marlowe. And he wrote for the Miami News. He was the film critic and the music critic. And we were a Miami News family. People got into the Miami Herald, the Miami News. And in the Miami News, John Marlowe would write, he said, the greatest director alive is Peter Bogdanovich. And they all laughed. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. And Stevie Van Zandt's the most important musician around. And I was 13 years old, impressionable young guy. And so, as you know, all far too well, I really took this stuff to heart. And so the last film we did was about Peter. May he rest in peace. I still love him and miss him every day. And then we did this one about Stevie. I was just an impressionable young guy, and I found out about his career at a very early age. And Steven, in the 80s, when I found out about him, had just launched this career as this character, Little Steven. He had been Miami Steve Van Zandt in the E Street Band, but now he had just launched this new persona, Little Steven. And I just got interested in him. I started going back and listening to all these records he would kind of write, produce, arrange, and be the sort of Svengali behind, say, Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes, a whole band where he was kind of doing everything, managing them as well, but not appearing on the records, and just producing, arranging, writing, and managing. And he did a great record for Ronnie Spector, where he put Ronnie Spector with the E Street Band. They covered "Say Goodbye to Hollywood." He had arranged the horns on some Springsteen stuff. He was this guy that was always in the background. Eventually, he joined Springsteen's band and then launched this incredible solo career. Here's why he's interesting. He helped free Nelson Mandela and end apartheid in South Africa by creating all this awareness about what apartheid was, and you'll see that whole story in the movie. First satellite radio show, first branded satellite radio show, which was Little Steven's Underground Garage. He also had the first streaming show on Netflix, which was Lilyhammer, which is the show he wrote and produced and even directed some of them. Has his own record label, Wicked Cool Records, and continues to produce for so many artists. He was on Broadway, brought back the Rascals, has this huge educational program that's about using rock and roll to teach different subjects in school. We have over 75,000 teachers registered in this curriculum, and they have it all over America. He's a radical guy. And because I started following him at such an early age, I really followed the whole career. And I felt like people would be interested. They knew the work, but they didn't know it was all one guy doing all these things. I don't think anybody knows that Silvio Dante helped free Nelson Mandela.
Yeah, you got a lot of heavy hitters to appear in this documentary. You interviewed Paul McCartney. Obviously, Bruce Springsteen's going to show up for a Stevie Van Zandt documentary. But what is it about Stevie that allowed him to make such a significant mark in the lives of all of these really big names in music, such that they'd want to sit down with you for an interview for your documentary?
It is crazy who's in there. Eddie Vedder, Paul McCartney, Bono, Joan Jett, and in the world of business, Ted Sarandos from Netflix, Richard Plepler from HBO, Scott Greenstein from Sirius, Jim Allen from the Hard Rocks. Stevie has touched every aspect of the business, and always as a groundbreaking figure. But he's quiet. He's in the background. Even for being a guy that dresses as crazy as he dresses and is as wild as he is, he's kind of a background figure. But his career also has these wild ups and downs. The movie also tells a story of his love affair with his wife, had been married all this time, Maureen Van Zandt, of course, his friendship with Bruce, leaving the E Street Band at the height of their popularity. He produced Born in the USA, 7 top 10 singles, and then quit right before the record came out. So he didn't do the tour. He was up, trying to free Mandela and trying to do stuff for Native Americans and migrant workers. It's a wild story. You get Reuben Blades, Jackson Brown, and you'll see file footage of everyone from Ray Barretto to George Clinton to Lou Reed to Joey Ramone. It's a wild movie. Wait till you see this flick. They wanted to talk about him because you guys are younger than me, but Stevie in the 80s and 90s was one of the most interesting musical artists around. He would put out reggae records and hard rock records, and he'd put out funk records and soul records. And he has a lot of fans that are pretty passionate. Like Eddie Vedder had been waiting his whole life to talk about Stevie's music. He'd covered his songs a lot. And as soon as I got there, you could tell Ed was like, I've been waiting my whole life, because he covered his music so much and he was so knowledgeable, such a fan. And, they told us Eddie has a hard out at 4. You have to be in your car at 4 p.m. Well, at 4 a.m., we were still talking and playing music. We were playing music and talking. We stayed up all night long. And yeah, I feel like Ed being part of that grunge scene, that doesn't really align with the whole E Street Band Stevie thing. So I think he didn't have a lot of friends to talk to this music that he was very passionate about with. And it was like that on down. Bill Wyman's in it from the Stones.
So obviously this show, Bill, is geared towards empowering independent creators, and that's why we do what we do. It's about educating. And so I'm wondering if there are some lessons from Stevie's life and career that you think are worth imparting to independent creators, to young creators.
Yeah, I would say so. He's been saying this in interviews, and I think it comes across in the movie. He's like 34, 35 years old. He's been working for 15 years to get the E Street Band, because those guys were in bands. They were in a metal band called Steel Mill, Bruce and Steve. They did all their bands, and they were in Jukes. But they've been working for 15 years to get to the point where they're going to be the biggest band in the world. And then he quits. He did all the work. He quits. And he goes, man, this is in the movie. I don't want to give it away. But he's like, I'm flying to South Africa. I'd always been – and I lost my fear of everything. I lost my fear of flying. I lost my fear of everything. And these guys that I'm talking to that are in the militant wing of the ANC called the ZAPU, they're fingering their machetes. He's there to explain. They think he's breaking the boycott. He's like, I wasn't scared because I felt like my life was over. Everything I'd worked for was done. And yet, all the good things that happened to me happened after my first dream died. He's like, everything that happened with Nelson Mandela, then, my whole career, then acting and David Chase calling me for The Sopranos. He's like, everything good that happened to me happened after my first dream was dead. And he goes, if you can hang on, if you don't give in to despair, if you don't give in to doubt, and if you're flexible and you can pivot, just keep going, because you never know what's in store.
Bill, I am a documentary freak. It's almost like a marital problem for me, because I come home and I watch every documentary about everything. And I think making documentaries is very cool. I think I personally would stink at it. What is it about making documentary? I mean, you said, we spoke briefly before the show about music and weightlifting and all kinds of stuff. And the question is, what is it about why are you drawn to making documentaries? What is it about that process as opposed to making some other kind of film that you think is cool or fun or just sort of generally magnetic for you?
Oh man, that's a wonderful question. And thank you. And I did enjoy talking about that. I'm a doc freak myself. I watch a lot of them. For me, the kind of documentaries that I like to make are the ones where you know a little something about the guy, but I personally know more. And instead of boring people at dinner with let me tell you about Steve Van Zandt.
Yeah, right.
Oh, you think you know Peter Bogdanovich, the guy who was with Sybil Shepherd for a while? I got a story for you about Peter Bogdanovich. I would rather these are guys that like I make very specific ones where it's like I know a lot about the person. People know who he is, and he has enough celebrity capital that other people kind of know that are going to bring eyeballs to it, and that help me tell the story. So I felt like, yeah, people know that Peter Bogdanovich directed The Last Picture Show and What's Up, Doc, and people maybe they know the story of what the tragedy that happened with Dorothy Stratton, but they don't know the whole story. And it's the same with Stevie. Oh yeah, the guy from The Sopranos and the E Street Band. I don't think in what happened in South Africa. I mean, you'll see in the movie, a lot of people give him credit for turning the tide of the anti-apartheid movement and creating that. It's like nobody knows that was Silvio Dante that did that, and hopefully they will.
You know, it's funny what you're saying makes me think that the extent to which someone has had these huge, gargantuan successes is almost the extent to which people don't know anything about them. And what I mean by that is, like, I thought of, Ryan shoots me an email and says the guest this week is this great documentary made. He's making made a film about Stevie Van Zandt. And I said, oh yeah, whatever. Stevie Van Zandt. I know him. Sopranos,
bandana guy,
and bandana guy, Sopranos, and Bruce Springsteen. I'm like, yeah, checkmate. I know him. But at the end of the day, like, it's actually extraordinary. Almost how these other huge, almost commercial, obvious neon light successes eclipse, to be honest, his most important life's work, actually. And it just, I don't know, it just sort of dawned on me that's why documentaries of this nature are such an interesting vehicle. You know what I mean?
I love that you said that. I love that. I always love that kind of doc where it's like, you think you know the story,
right?
Here's the story. Because at least there's that hook where you know who the person is. And then you're like, and if you could keep it moving at a good pace, I think those are my favorite ones to watch. So those are my favorite ones to try to make.
Very cool, man. Very
Bill
cool.
Tech's new documentary, Stevie Van Zandt Disciple, will premiere on HBO on June 22nd. Will also be on HBO Max. I'm so thrilled for you, buddy. This is going to be a really fun few months for you. I hope you enjoy it every bit as much as you deserve to. You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting BillTech.com. Bill, before we let you go, interested in getting your perspective on our final question, given everything I know about you and the expertise you bring to bear. Do you have any last tips for the indie creators out there to help them move their careers forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to just be putting work out, and I just say grab your iPhone and go make a movie, or get a 16 millimeter or 8 millimeter camera and figure out how to work it and go make a movie, because I'm not a musician like Gideon, but I'm a filmmaker, and I always, even in the early days of videotape, when it was like prohibitive, the cost, you had to get that big giant video camera, would sit up here with like a thing you'd put on your shoulder. I just save up for months and rent one and spend the weekend shooting with my friends, even if it was not going to go anywhere. We all thought we were making the next Sundance hit. That turned out it wasn't anything at all. But I think you still work at your craft, because the things they say about mastery, and this is addressed in the movie as well. Paul McCartney says it in the movie. Stevie talks about it. The 10,000 hours. Just do the work. It will inform your life, and it'll inform your art, and if you're lucky, it'll inform the commercial aspects of it. But even if not, it's still enriching.
I encourage all you viewers and listeners to enjoy the products of Bill Tech's 10,000 Hours and check out some of the work he's done. When you are done watching Stevie Van Zandt Disciple on HBO when it premieres on June 22nd, please go back and find One Day Since Yesterday, Peter Bogdanovich and the Lost American Film. I believe you said it's on Peacock, right, Bill? Really, really cool documentary about Peter Bogdanovich. Much like in this documentary where you got some really heavy hitters to sit down for an interview. Similar experience with One Day Since Yesterday, right? You got Quentin Tarantino and Jeff Bridges and Jason Schwartzman and all these really terrific people that talked about the incredible mark that Bogdanovich left in their lives. It's a really great flick, especially if you love the movies. Bill,
and we had a great attorney on that, Mr.
well, you know,
Right,
he
Kairalla.
got the job done. Thank you so much for joining us this week, Bill.
Thank you for having me. It's a thrill to be on with all of you.
All right,
Thanks,
right
Bill.
on. Yeah, you said it right, Gideon. Like when Bill told me I'm doing a documentary about Stevie Van Zandt, I did exactly what you did. Oh yeah, Bandana Sopranos. Not sure how you're going to make a whole documentary out of that guy. And then it turns out that like he's got this really rich, amazing life. Played a pivotal role in turning the tide on apartheid. That's wild. I am so excited for this documentary. It's going to be appointment television for me.
Totally, man. Totally. Another example of that. Everybody remembers the band Blood, Sweat, and Tears, right? We've all heard of Blood, Sweat, and Tears. There's a documentary called What the Hell Happened to Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And I had no idea they were used as a pawn by the United States government for foreign relations with Eastern Bloc companies. And by the way, they were sent on tour there and they had no idea what was going on. So it's just another example of you think you know, but you don't know, as Tech said.
Well, and that's really the best use of the documentary medium, right? Is to shine the light on somebody who we don't know a lot about and we really should.
Yeah.
And, documentaries help to do just that for us. I'm really excited for that one. Again, it's called Stevie Van Zandt Disciple. It'll premiere on HBO and HBO Max on June 22nd. Before we sign off this week, Gideon, I want to take the time we have left to play your band's newest song. I saw the music video for this. You showed it to me. And my first thought is I said, oh my God, we have to put this on volume.com. We need as many people to hear and see this terrific work as possible. You want to tell us a little bit about it before we play it to close out the show?
Yeah. I mean, it's called AI Says I Love You. We're releasing it in mid-July. We'll release the song and the video. One thing for all you independent artists out there, sadly, when you release music, it goes a lot better when you release video content with it, which is a royal pain in the ass. Because sometimes you just want to write a good song and you want to release it. You don't want to have to make a video. But we made a video, and the whole theme is sort of the plastic soul, if you will, of AI. And so we made a fun video with all kinds of AI tools in it to go along with this almost fusion-y rock jazz tune. Anyway, whatever, another song.
So we're going to close out with the song this week. So I'll just say our thanks to Bill Tech, to Cassandra Spangler, our thanks to producer Lauren, thanks to you as always, Gideon King. We're going to close out with AI Says I Love You by Gideon King in the City Blog here on Break the Business.
See you, folks.
AI says I love you, but my heart says AI says I love you, but my heart says no. It's complex, says the liar to the victim. It's nothing you could ever grasp. Take your salad and the system. You ain't cursed, you just play bad. AI says I love you, and my daddy says the same. This war of desire just made me come up lame. My brother says I need you, and my sister says no games. AI says I love you, taking bullets just the same. Surfing in Miami, making love to the sun. Balancing in Brickell, waving bye to you. It's complex, says the liar to the victim. It's nothing you could ever grasp. So take your salad and your system. You ain't cursed, you just sister says no